And I want to say hello to all of you. On behalf of the College of Arts and Sciences, I'm Janet Parrott, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Theater and co-director of the Film Studies program. And I am, start my video, and I will moderate today's event. So if I have to read some directions here. If you have a comment or question to add to the conversation, you can share by typing or speaking. If you would like to type, click the Q&A button on your screen. I think it's in the bottom area. And you can share by typing, or you can speak. You can raise your hand. If you would like to raise your hand, there's a raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. I think maybe you all have seen that. And again, we can walk you through if we all get stuck. And then if you raise your hand, I can unmute you, and you can, or you can unmute yourself. I will hover over your name, and you'll be able to ask Tom directly the question. So we'll just see how this goes. So today I want to say thank you, Tom Shelly, for being here. Tom Shelly is an award-winning executive producer and showrunner in Los Angeles. There's Tom. I hope you all can see him. Tom received his BFA from the Department of Photography and Cinema from The Ohio State University in 1984, and he received his MFA in Cinema Television from the University of Southern California. Tom began his career immediately with a decade-long stint as a producer-director on the series America's Most Wanted. At the same time, he produced behind-the-scenes documentaries for numerous feature films, including Braveheart and Forrest Gump. Saban Entertainment hired Tom in 1997 to produce the Fox Kids series Beetleborgs. In 2000, he was one of the original producers on the CBS series Survivor, for which he won an Emmy. He served as executive producer for shows for that show from 2004 to 2007, and received an additional 5 Emmy nominations. So that's very cool. He executive produced a various series for networks, including The Baby Borrowers, which is NBC, Dating in the Dark, ABC, Love in the Wild, NBC, Coupled, which is Fox, MGM Television, and more. He recently completed 2 pilots for CBS, Make Me a Mogul, and Small Business Champions, that's Pilgrim Studios. Tom also currently has a feature film in development. I'd love to hear more about that, Tom. He is represented by the talent agency ICM Partners. So welcome, Tom. I'm so glad you were able to join us today. And you know, we're here to ask you about why you chose Ohio State University, and tell us about your time here.
Yeah, well, I'm from Indiana originally, and I actually grew up in Bloomington, where Indiana University is, but I knew I wanted to study film, and I knew I wanted to get into the film industry. So when it was time to go to college, I researched schools in the area, you know, primarily in the Midwest. I looked at Michigan, I looked at Northwestern, and I looked a lot at Ohio State, and I you know, looked at the different courses and degrees, and decided Ohio State was, you know, the place to go. So came there in 1980 to 1984.
What made you, why did you want to get a degree in film from Ohio State?
You know, I had just always been just very interested in films and television. I just at an early age decided that's what I wanted to do. And luckily I had parents who, they were supportive. I think it was more that I was just so persistent about it that they let me, you know, do it. And Ohio State had a really, you know, when I did the research, they just had a really comprehensive program that balanced film history, film theory with actual, you know, hands-on production. And they just seemed to have, the school seemed to have the most, you know, well-rounded degree program. So, and you know, I visited and I loved the school, loved campus. And that's why, yeah, why I decided to go there.
Yay. So, the film business, the television business, it's huge and it's mysterious about how you even start. And so how did you begin your career?
Yeah, it's very, you're right. Mysterious is a great word because there's no real clear cut, path to get into the business. So, I went to Ohio State. I just tried to just immerse myself in, not only learning as much as I could, but also doing as much as I could. There was at the time a highlights film that came every year that shot the highlight for the Memorial Golf Tournament, and they would come and actually hire film students to go out and work with the crews and be kind of second camera assistants. So I did that because I wanted, work experience. It was kind of not really an official internship at the school, but, I just wanted to get as much practical experience under my belt as I was, learning film. And then when I did graduate from Ohio State, I moved out here to Los Angeles and started my master's degree at USC. So that actually gave me kind of a 3-year cushion out here in Los Angeles to start, making connections and sort of starting to build my network of people, which is really important in the business. And then, when I came out of school here in Los Angeles, I had a student film that I had done, and I just happened to read in Variety magazine, when you actually used to get the magazine, used to have a listing for job openings at the back of it. And I saw one day for a television show that was looking for writers, America's Most Wanted. And so I sent my student film in saying, well, I wrote this. And luckily the film, or the series, I think they were only maybe they were in their first season, maybe their second, I don't know. But I think I got in just at the right time when, they were looking for people, and they hired me to go out and start directing these recreations that they did for the show. And that's kind of how I got in. But it's so much about timing and persistence. It's really about persistence and, making as many contacts as you can. And the persistence puts you in the position of being somewhere when an opportunity arises. So there's so much that can work against you and so many unknowns and so many things you're not in control of. So the more you can stay with it and persist, that you'll eventually meet up with that opportunity that, allows you to kind of move forward into the business. But it's so much of it's about, having a wide network of people, because everybody goes on to do different things. And somebody you work with on one show in one capacity may now be, an executive in a position to hire you for another show, a couple years down the road. So it's, there's a lot of moving pieces that you don't, like I said, you don't really have control of. So you just, put yourself out there as much as you can and hope for the opportunity to arise.
So it is a really complex business, and, because you have the business part, you have the creative part. How is it that your education that you received both here at Ohio State and your MFA at in California, how does going to school help you in this business? Because there are a lot of people that say, you don't need to go to film school, you don't need to do that, you just go and start working. What's the advantage of an education?
Yeah, I think there's a few advantages. I mean, for the one thing, it gives you a platform and a structure to build off of. You're always learning, no matter what you do. Yet every show I do, I learn something new. And you're starting out, if you've got a film degree, you're starting out with a very strong foundation that you can build on. And there's things that I to this day, when I go in start a show, or when I'm working day to day on a show, there are things that professors specifically taught me in film school that I use. And one thing that really I always think about, and with my education with Ohio State, it was during a film history class that I took at Ohio State that I was exposed to the, cinema verite and the movement of direct cinema. And I really fell in love with that genre of documentary. And then, many years later, when I had the opportunity to work on the first season of Survivor, that's the approach I took. It's like, oh, I want to take that cinema verite kind of filmmaking, and we get to now present that to a national audience, a big broadcast audience. And I was just excited about being able to expose an audience to that, a hybrid of that kind of filmmaking. So it was really what I had learned in film history at Ohio State in Professor Ron Green's history class that I totally took with me as sort of a philosophy into that first season of Survivor. So you find yourself constantly using things that, different instructors and professors taught you in film school. It's always with me, no matter what I'm doing.
That's great. The film industry, the television industry changes all the time, right? And it's certainly changing a lot right now. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot more outlets than there used to be, right? All this streaming media. And so what kind of advice, I think this is something that students really want to know now, people that are starting off, starting their career, what sort of advice do you have for them? Sort of a big, broad question, but.
Yeah, no, you're right. Everything is changing. And I think, an honest assessment of that is the industry doesn't know where this is all going. I think everybody's kind of accepting that there's, the streaming platforms are becoming very important. And what that does as somebody who produces, content for those platforms is it kind of frees you up a little bit, because they'll do shows about maybe smaller subjects than, a cable or broadcast network would do. And they'll allow you a little more freedom in, the timing of your shows that you do. Like, I've done a streaming show where they told me, as long as it's about 15, each episode's about 15 minutes long. And then they turned out being a half hour long. And they were like, oh, okay, that's fine. Well, you can do that. But, in broadcast television, no, you've got exactly 42 minutes and, 10 seconds to the frame. That it's a different kind of discipline. So I think this allows you, I think it's allowing for more creative vision and more, unique niche kind of storytelling. And I would say, in terms of a bigger philosophy, about the best advice I can think to give everybody is don't operate out of fear. Go in and have a vision, have, support your vision on something and your creative take on something, because so many people I've seen, everybody's sort of trending towards operating out of fear and operating out of, I don't want to make the bosses mad. I don't want to, I want to, just not ruffle any feathers. But I think that's very stifling creatively. And that doesn't mean that you don't listen and you don't learn. And yes, you are a client. Most of the time you're working for somebody who's giving you the money to create a product for them. But I've just seen this trend of people not having a conviction about their vision. So again, you want to be collaborative, you want to be, work and learn with people, but definitely don't be afraid to stand behind your vision. And that's how, you break new ground. And I've seen a trend in this fear-based decision-making that I don't think is good for the business. So have a voice and stand by it. It's a little broad and philosophical, but.
Oh, that's great. When people registered for this event to hear you, some people left a few questions, mm-hmm. And so I've got them in front of me. And someone asked, have you connected with other OSU alums in your career?
I have, and the funny thing is, a lot of times I don't even know they were Ohio State alums until after I worked with them. There's a yeah, a few different people that I've run into that I work with quite a bit, and then I found out afterwards they were from Ohio State. I gotta admit, I haven't been probably as good as I should have been about really, being proactive about connecting with Ohio State alums. But I think it's important, and it's very helpful. It's just, it gives you, all of a sudden you have a shared, just community, and so much of what you need out here is support. So, and there are quite a few, by the way, Ohio State alums out here in the entertainment business. There were two guys that I actually, when I was at Ohio State, are out here also. I've kind of lost touch with them, but two specific people that when I was in my class at OSU that are out here doing quite well in the business. So there's a lot of OSU alum out here, and I would say definitely, make contact with them, because it's, if nothing else, it's that support group that helps you.
Another question is it necessary to move to LA to work as a producer and showrunner? And also, if you could explain to people what the difference is, what is a showrunner, right? What's a producer? What are those roles?
Yeah. And they can mean different, even the word producer can mean so many different things depending on what you're working in. And in television, as a producer, you can be either, you can lean more to the creative side, or you can lean more to the logistical and business side, or it's a combination of both. A showrunner specifically tends to be a very hands-on overall manager of the series. A showrunner is usually creative as well as logistical, and they're the ones that the networks fall back on to just someone they know will deliver the show every week so that it can go on the air, and they know that everything technically and creatively is all put together in kind of a nice package. So as a showrunner, you're a very hands-on manager of the series, and you're pretty much living it, every minute of every day. You're solely focused on that show. As a general producer, you can have several projects going on, or as an executive producer, you can be overseeing numerous television shows and maybe not be quite as hands-on, and, bringing in people underneath you to work on it. The same is true for a showrunner. I have people that I'll bring in, my co-executive producers, my supervising producers and that, but I'm really a direct manager on that. And depending on what you're interested in, if you're interested in the logistical side, then that can be more of a line producer who's really watching over the budget very carefully and the logistics, or you can tend more to be more of the creative producer who's just wants to tell stories and is out finding stories to tell, and that's it. It can mean a lot of different things, but specifically, showrunners very hands-on.
So, it used to be that you always had to go to LA. Always had to go to LA, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To be in the business. And so, what is that now? Is that necessary?
Yeah, that's starting to change quite a bit. There's, I think for a certain level, like for me as a showrunner, it would be difficult for me not to live in LA, just because, it's different now that we're, in quarantine, but so often you need to just go and have a meeting with the networks here. You need to be in their offices, and they kind of, the networks will feel a certain security knowing you're right here in town, and they can get a hold of you and you can discuss things kind of in the moment and on the fly. So as a showrunner, it would be difficult right now for me not to live in LA, but there are states like Georgia that have great tax incentives. And what that does is that draws production in a very real way to their state. And now, Georgia has actual studios and a lot of local crew. You still tend to get, if a showrunner goes there or a director or somebody like that, they usually come from LA or New York. But more and more we're seeing in the business, the tax incentive states drawing people there, and people live there. A friend of mine's an actor, and he came out here originally from Atlanta and had a really hard time making it out here. And then he moved back to Atlanta, and then all the production moved there. And now he's doing quite well as an actor. And I said, "Are you going to move back to LA?" And he said, "No." "Why? I'm doing way better here in LA than I ever, or in Georgia than I ever was in California." So it's definitely changing. I think this is one of those things that I think people in the business don't know how it's all going to, eventually pan out. But I think opportunities are opening up specifically in these tax incentive states, because that's a very real draw to production. I mean, producers really look for, breaks on their budgets wherever they can.
So somebody asks about the transition between film and television, and there's obviously a big difference between those, right? So,
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the transition. Was it easy? Is it easy to go back and forth between film and television? How is it working for you?
Yeah, those transitions are always hard. It's the cliche that you get typecast and sort of pigeonholed in different things is very true. I mean, people a lot of times are just afraid to take risks. So I hear it a lot when I'm talking to my agents or networks about shows. You'll hear, "Well, yeah, you do the outdoor adventure shows or you do dating shows, but you don't really do talent shows on a stage. So, we're kind of looking for other people." So you really get pigeonholed in whatever it is you have done. So it's just a matter, again, it's persistence. You've got to just, if you want to make a transition into some other kind of storytelling, you just got to persist and keep telling people that you have, you can bring your own ideas and vision to it. And you just gotta, a lot of this business is just chipping away and just pushing and sticking with it. So it is tough. That's a very legitimate question. You definitely get typecast.
So somebody asked, what are some good entry steps to become a producer? What skills and internships are useful?
I would say well, again, there's different types of producers. You do want to know, overall, you want to know the logistics, and you want to, have a creative voice. I mean, producers really are storytellers in that, you're usually the one who has the story idea to begin with. So having I met with a producer once. When I was just starting out. This guy he was a pretty big producer, and I won't say his name because he used to be, he loved presenting the image of being kind of like a godfather. He wanted to be like a gangster. And I asked him I said, what should I do as a producer? How do I get the money to produce a film? And he said, forget about the money. What you need is a property. If you have a property, the money will come. And what he meant was a story. You've got to have, which makes sense. You've got to have a script. You've got to have the rights to a script. You've got to have one of your own scripts. You've got to have the rights to a book that you're going to turn into a movie. So becoming a person who wants to tell stories and then getting a hold of those stories, actually possessing those stories, whether it's through making a legal deal with somebody or writing it yourself, you've got to own stories that you control. And then you become valuable if you have a story that a studio or network thinks they can make money off of. So look for stories and then get as much experience on sets and in production as you can. I mean, I really tried to just, when I was in school, I tried, like I said, like the Memorial Golf Tournament film, I tried to just get on sets at different levels and just work and just learn as much as I could. And, every little aspect of it. And the more you do and the more you get hired for other things, it all just kind of builds and builds and builds. It's just like this big mountain you're climbing the whole time, it never really stops. And you're just piling on more and more bits of your experience and your learning. So just expose yourself to as much experience as you can. But look for those stories. That's what's important. Always look for stories you want to tell.
You know, someone asked a question here about how is it that they can adapt their own novels to a script and possibly sell them. You know, how does that work? That's a whole business in itself, right?
Oh yeah, but I think that's great. Yeah, if you're writing novels, then you're creating material that is exactly what this business is. You know, we're looking for stories again. So, you know, not only as a writer, not only do you need, and I'm not a writer, and I have great respect for people who are working writers, because I think it's really the most difficult part of storytelling and filmmaking and television. But, you know, not only your literary principles, you know, all the, you know, plot and character and setting and metaphor and all that, but you also need to know now the conventions of filmmaking. You know, you need to know how a film script is structured, usually into 3 acts. You need to understand the style that scripts are written in, and you really have to understand if your story that you're adapting, is it commercial? Is it something a studio can market? And can they, you know, it's a business, and does your story have characters and a plot that will attract big stars, which is what the studio usually uses to market the film. So you've got to really look at the business marketing side of your story and be brutally honest with yourself. If, you know, are you giving the studio something that they can turn around and sell to the public? So there's a lot to learn about writing, lots of books, lots of classes and school, and so much of it is just about practice, just writing every day and you know, studying, but really understanding how to make your story very commercial in a you know, film sense.
I'm looking at the Q&A, and Dalton, who's one of the students in this class, and he's a senior working on his senior project right now. And he asked a question. He said, what are some common misconceptions that you think people new to the industry have before they get involved?
Misconceptions. You know, don't assume that you're going to come in and there's going to be a big break, that, you know, you're all of a sudden going to be directing your film, you know, right, you know, as soon as you go out to LA, and that, you know, you're going to get that big break right away. It's really is sort of a, you know, a curve where you're building, making your connections, you know, acquiring all your experiences to put together into this package that is that you keep building upon. So it's rarely an immediate thing. And I don't even know if that's really a conception. I mean, back when I was in film school, people used to think they could get a big break if they just did that one student film and they got it to the right agent or something. All of a sudden they'd be getting scripts to direct for the studios. It's no matter what, it's always a long process that you just have to kind of prepare for. I'm trying to think of what other misconceptions there are about this business. There's a lot of cliches about this business that are true. So I'm trying to think of what the misconceptions are. Yeah, it's just that it really, you got to kind of commit to this. It's not something that's going to come easy, and it's just, you have to have the passion for it. And if you do, stick with it, and little by little, you'll, you know, work your way into what you want to do, or you'll find another path into something that you didn't think you were going to do, and you know, enjoy doing that. I don't know if that's really helps with the misconceptions, but I can't really think of any misconceptions right now.
No, I thought that was a good one, to say that, you know, it takes time.
Yeah. And that's no matter what. I mean, that's just, that's the way this business is.
And that it's business and it's work, right?
Yep, exactly.
So what tips, well, let's see, what tips or contacts can you share for newcomers to the LA industry?
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming out to LA, understand a few things. You're gonna have to stay afloat somehow when you come out here. Like I said, it can take you a while to really get your foot in the door somewhere. So you're gonna have to support yourself. And like I said, I went to grad school, so I had that kind of cushion for 3 years to, I was busy studying while I was also trying to do other things and to get into the business. Again, it's just look for every opportunity you can to have experience. I mean, finding that first job out here without connections it just takes time, and it takes a lot of research and really, keeping your eyes and ears open. And what I did when I was in film school, I did a couple different jobs where, I needed some money, and I always try to do something that's still, even if I wasn't on a film set, it was something that I was interested in. And the first job I had out here I was a tour guide at Universal Studios that I did because I needed money, and as a film student, and I wanted to do something that I was interested in. And it was great because I would drive around the back lot and see productions going on, and we were allowed to visit the sets even on days we weren't working. So I would do that and hang out on sets and get to talk to some of the crew and that kind of thing. And I also did extra work out here. I was an extra, and I got to go on sets and see directors directing and, actors and everything. So I always tried to just try to find things to support yourself out here that keeps you in this world and keeps you in the business that you can, find as fun and sort of keeps your mindset towards what you want to do, because there's so many people out here that are all trying to do the same thing. I mean, that's one of the cliches, every single waiter out here has a script that they've written. Everybody everywhere is pretty much trying to get into this business. So you just try and keep your focus on the business itself and what you like about it.
There are several questions, and they're all about how do I begin? And so,
yeah, again, it's not there. Unfortunately, like I said, there's no real path. It's just your passion and your persistence that's going to, and really looking for those opportunities. And the more you can even do the little jobs in film production and show people that you're reliable, that's huge. If you just show up on time and you do your job and you deliver on these littler production jobs, people will remember you and they'll quickly hire you for other things. Or like I said, they'll move over to another production company doing something else, and they'll hire you for that. So I think it's just important to, to show the discipline when you do have, a smaller job, and just keep up the persistence. You'll go through spells where, you're not doing anything and you feel like you can't make any progress, but you will if you just stick with it. Persistence is the big thing.
That's good. There's a couple of questions that have shown up in the Q&A section, and Boniface asked, he's a student in the senior project class. He asked a very good question, which are, what are some of the common things that people do that cause them to fail in the industry?
Well, let me think about that. There's probably lots of different things. Burning bridges. Actually, that's a good one, because I got that advice from a film school instructor who had worked in the business a long time. So keep your channels of communications open. There's so much emotion in this business, and people are very passionate about what they do, and there's a lot of jealousy that goes on out here. Just try and not focus on that. Focus on positive relationships with people. It's a very there's a lot of people out here, a lot of people trying to get in, but you'll find that once you start working, it's actually a very small community of people that you end up working with. So keeping those relationships positive and open is a big thing. Don't be careful about sabotaging relationships. And trying to think what else. What are the things that failure to avoid? Just being disciplined and delivering, and knowing that remain reliable. Don't become unreliable, because everything in this business is hard enough that people just want the positive energy and the positive people that they know will deliver. Again, I can't really think of, there's lots of stories of failure out here for a lot of different reasons, but those are kind of the big ones I can think of.
Oh, that's a good one. Arvin writes a question asking about let me see, sorry, I have trifocals on. What are some of the red flags you would look out for when negotiating the sale of a script?
The red flags would be if you didn't have a lawyer. That's that's a big red flag. I mean, you learn after a while what's in certain contracts for different things, whether it's a show that you're producing, or whether it's a script that somebody is a deal somebody's making with you about a script to buy from you. But you have, you quickly bring in, if somebody's making you an offer for a script, it's easy for you to pick up the phone and find an attorney out here, or even an agent who will look out for you and help you, negotiate that stuff. That's what they're here for. So if you've got people who are trying to buy something from you, you'll very quickly find an agent and an attorney who will look out for you. But you'll learn what is standard and what isn't, based on your experience level and your professional background. And that's just something you kind of learn over time after doing different contracts. But there are people out here who, like I said, who make a business out of taking care of you and your contract. So you're covered if you've got someone, willing to give you a lot of money for something. Which I hope that happens. That's what we all want.
Arvin asked another question. Is there anything that you would do differently if you were to start over?
Yes, I would. It's tough, but I always, I'm very interested in feature films. I'm all of my work primarily is television, and I love what I'm doing, but I probably would have, you get distracted in your business. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Not necessarily, like I said, you get pigeonholed, and your career is kind of like you can get easily pulled in this direction or this direction. And because that's how you're succeeding. So if anything, I would go back and just really try and stick to a more clear path of feature films, because that's kind of where my passion really is. Although, like I said, I really, really enjoy what I do. And it's not like I would necessarily change it. I would just maybe be a little more conscious of it.
Somebody asked this question, and again, I think everything is in such flux right now, right? But what kind of shows are in demand?
It is in flux. I think, as you were saying earlier, with the way things are changing with streaming platforms and everything, I think everything's kind of up for grabs. If you've got a really solid idea or a unique story or a unique vision on something, a lot of these streaming platforms are trying very different kinds of shows and different kinds of films. So I actually think it's kind of a good time and a good opportunity for young filmmakers and young producers to try new stuff, because I think that's what kind of rises above, the same old stuff that, you've been seeing for years. There just seems to be a lot of new, people taking chances on new stuff. So I don't know if there's any one thing that is in demand. I think there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of creative new stuff.
So here's a skills question. What kind of skills should people be, what are some of the important skills students need to be learning right now?
Specifically in film and TV, again, just knowing your craft, like really know all those, aspects of filmmaking and storytelling, from, pre-production, writing, production, editing, just really like knowing kind of your trade craft is just, that's one thing that school's great for. And again, knowing your, taking in all of the film theory and the film history. And that's really just, while you're in school, it's great. You're getting exposed to all that. And, the more you can build on that in school, whether it's, learning what makes a good continuity edit, what is the stage line when you're shooting, and eye lines, and how does that all cut together? Knowing the specifics of your craft is really important, because, those are those reliable things that people want to know you have a master of when you start working. But also having that more general foundation of theory and history and film criticism, all that just, it does give you an advantage. So you just, all of it, just absorb everything you can in film school. It will be helpful. And it's, you're going to learn most of the disciplines you need. But like I said, you're always learning. Every time you do something, it's a new learning experience. So you want to kind of, make your foundation as big as you can before you go out there.
Do you know of anybody who's in production right now?
Yeah, there are. Production is starting up. It's, the industry's trying really hard to get moving again. And I know there's a lot of new mandates for safety and COVID management on sets. I know I've heard of some television shows that are in production. I've definitely heard of some feature films that are in production, but it's been a little rocky, as people on the crew and that test positive. But it's happening. It's slow, and it's kind of in the early stages, but the they're definitely getting back out and producing.
So what's your current passion right now?
Well, yeah, I do have a couple films that that I've been trying for. It takes so long, but there's a couple films that we're trying to push forward, me and some partners, and still continue. I would love to find a really great sort of a very personal docu-series, more of just a freeform documentary series to do that centers on some just some individual characters, and kind of move away from the bigger productions that I've done in the past, and just really get into some more stories that personally I find passionate for, because like I said, I think there are platforms and there's people who will show that kind of stuff now, and I'd like to get into more of that personal storytelling. Not about me, but something that I'm personally passionate about.
Can you talk a little bit about collaboration? This is you can make tiny little films all yourself, and it can take you a while. But to do something that's bigger, that goes to the next level, you really have to work with people. So can you talk a little bit about collaboration?
Yeah, that's hugely important, because for two reasons. You're going to be forced to collaborate with people. You'll be forced to collaborate with studio and network execs. You'll be forced to collaborate with other people who were brought into a show or a film by a production company. So just by its nature, you have to collaborate if you're doing, any kind of bigger commercial work. Secondly, you want that collaboration. You want to be surrounded by a lot of other really creative people, because you want the best idea. You always want to service the project or the story that you're doing. And I love, collaborating and having with passionate creative people, because they'll come together. You'll come up with ideas that you alone never would have thought of. People will bring great things to it if you create that environment. And it really is crucial. I mean, you do have to work with people all the time, but I find that very positive. That collaboration elevates your project, whatever you're working on. So yeah, collaboration is good.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions about collaboration. Jacob asks, was there a difference between what the collaboration looked like earlier in your career than it does now? He said Jake asked, you were talking about having partners now on some different projects. Yeah, what does collaboration look like now compared to earlier?
It's, again, it goes back to that original thing I was saying, where the tone of some people that you have to collaborate with has changed, in that, people, it's a fearful time. So people are, even though there's more, to me, there seems to be more opportunity for different kinds of storytelling. There's this, people are scared. And so there's a lot of fear-based decision-making. So you want to surround yourself with people who have the same passion you do, or kind of the same vision you have about a specific project. If you can, bring people together yourself and try and get a project moving forward. Like, the partners I'm talking about they're friends of mine. They're people that I've known in the business. For one of them is an old film school friend of mine from USC, and we've found stories together that we think would make great stories. So we're starting with a kind of a friendship and a shared passion for what we're doing, and then everything just becomes fun when you've got a group of people that you're collaborating with that you're kind of doing from the ground up. It becomes very, very fun. It's hard, but it becomes fun when you're working on a show that you've been hired to do. And like I said, you've got that kind of forced collaboration. Again, that's not a bad thing necessarily. You're all kind of working more of a job, if that makes sense, as opposed to, something you kind of do from your own with your partners and your friends. But I just say be wary of the fear-based operating out of fear. I keep saying that because I see more and more of that in this business. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, then this leads into Jenna's question. Jenna asks about, have you ever had a difficult time collaborating with the director or studio exec or somebody? And do you have any tips on how to resolve creative conflicts?
Yes, that happens for sure. I mean, luckily as a showrunner, I'm usually very involved in, hiring the director. So, and that's the thing, when you hire people and you work, you start pulling productions together, you work with the people a lot. Yeah, often you bring in new people who you feel will have the right creative sense for what you're doing. But luckily with directors, I have a big say in hiring who that is. So I don't have that many conflicts with the directors, but definitely with other, with studio execs and that. And it's not bad, because you want that kind of back and forth, push me and pull me kind of thing, because that inevitably makes everything better. It makes the end product better. If you just have too much reverence for what you're doing and you think it's great and smooth sailing, you're not pushing yourself and you're not pushing the story. So I think that battle back and forth it's necessary. the networks has network executives will have a very specific thing they're trying to attain, which is ratings. And you may have more of a creative thing that you want to bring out in the show. And so that back and forth I think it's very important for, making something good.
Oh, that's great.
It's like the old when Alfred Hitchcock first came to America, he had a very tumultuous relationship with Selznick, and on their first American film, they did Rebecca, 1940. They were battling each other back and forth. But I think if you watch that's one of my favorite films. So I think that that sort of push and pull is really important.
We have about 9-10 minutes left, and I don't see any questions or anybody's hands up. And so is there anything that anybody wants to ask, or that you want to share that we haven't talked about, Tom?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I know everybody, is probably, they want to know the best way to get into the business and get your foot in the door and really start building. It's just, like I said, you've got to commit, be prepared for, how it's going to be tough, but it's going to be fun too. If you're just persistent and you kind of always put yourself, in a position where you're surrounded by what you're interested in. And, be prepared for some ups and downs and, more lean times and other times when things are going great, but that's kind of the business all the time. And there was a camera operator friend of mine who, when I was kind of early on starting out and as just an independent person, not under contract anywhere. And I asked this camera operator, it's like, do you get stressed out when you're not, you don't have a job and you're not working? And he was an older guy, and he said, oh yeah. He said, that never goes away. You're always going to have those times. So it's, you just have to have a sort of a resolve that's what this is like. And it's not torture. It's just the business. And you just have you have to have sort of a mindset to realize that, just keep pursuing what you're doing and it'll be great.
That's sort of interesting to talk about, I think, in that now we have a couple questions, but to think about being a little bit of a nomad in this business, right? Because you really are going from, one project to the next.
Yep.
And talk a little bit about that, because that's that's very different than being at a university and teaching. That's very different than, being a dentist and working in practice, right?
Yeah, it's a very, very different way of working. You really, ultimately, you're really your own boss. I mean, yeah, when you get hired to do something, you'll have bosses. But when that ends, I mean, the job could be over and you're right back, off on your own again. So that's where your network becomes very important. The more people the more people you have good working relationships with, the better, because that's, those calls will come in from all different angles when you're, when you've got all those connections. And it's just something you have to adopt as your lifestyle. And I think a lot of my friends back in Indiana, even people out here who are in different positions or different professions, they don't understand. It sounds crazy to them that you're kind of, going from job to job, but it's just the nature of the business. I mean, there are jobs where you can get a contract job at a network or a production company doing certain things. But as at least in my position as a showrunner producer, it's job to job, and you just naturally accept that as your way of life. But I find it kind of thrilling, actually. I kind of like it. But it can it can be tough sometimes.
Boniface asks if, he said, what's the industry like in Portland, Seattle, Vancouver area? Do you know anything about that?
Well, Vancouver is, and I've never, well, not for a long time. I haven't shot anything up there in a long time, but Canada is a big tax credit country. So a lot of productions go to Vancouver and Toronto and places. So Vancouver, yes. What were the others? Seattle and where else? I'm not sure about the other state. What was it? What did he say? Seattle.
Portland, Seattle. Yeah, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, on the Canadian side, yes, there's a lot. The problem is, unless you're one of the, as we say, above the line people, like a director or a producer or a cinematographer, where the core people that the production wants to move up to, take on location. A lot of those locals, a lot of the rest of your crew is going to be picked up locally. So I don't know the specifics of the tax incentive deals with Canada, but they make you hire a certain number of people locally, a certain amount of your crew, in order to get the tax credit. So it's kind of a plus or minus as someone who's trying, working on the crew. Unless you're, like I said, you're one of those above the line people, then you can go in and shoot there. But a lot of production goes on in Vancouver for sure. I don't know about Seattle and Portland so much. I haven't heard of a lot of things, but that doesn't mean it's, there's not a lot of stuff going on.
It looks like we have maybe one last question here, and it says, if you have left LA and want to return, sounds like somebody's thinking about this, is now a good time with COVID, fires, and industry starting to reopen?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that's kind of a personal choice. I do think the industry is slowly going to get back on track here. Like I said, everybody's trying very hard to make it work and really being very proactive about doing production again. So I do think it's picking back up. And I think it'll continue to do that as, the management of COVID on set, gets more, they get more experience with it. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, other places like Atlanta are, there's a lot going on in cities like that. So I think that's kind of a personal choice. I think the industry is going to come back here, and it's just nobody really knows how it's going to change. But I think that's probably more of a personal choice.
Well, we've all spent a lot of time on our computers
Yeah.
looking at stories right now. So we are almost at time, and there aren't any other questions or hands raised. And let's see. It's been so great to have you visit us today. And again, you were visiting my class, and which is 2:30 to 3:30. They're the seniors making their projects. So they have 2 semesters to make their work, and they will present that to us, and then they graduate. So, this
Excellent.
is, yeah, so it's very exciting for them.
And I hope everything, works out positively in terms of being able to, actually shoot and all that under the restrictions and everything. So
it's challenging, but I think they're figuring it out.
Great. Well, yeah, good. Adapt. I think that's what everybody's trying to do.
So I want to thank you so much for visiting us, Tom. And
yeah, thank you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you, and thank you.
So thanks everybody for coming. It was nice to see some names of people in the participant list that I haven't seen in a long time. There's at least one person who was probably teaching at the time that in the photography area, Ardeen. She may have been there when you were there, Ardeen Nelson, when you were in school, Tom. And there's a couple other names here that it's nice to see some old friends. So, and of course our current students. But you take care, and thanks for visiting us. And we hope to talk to you again.
Fantastic. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.